So, Capcom's been doing great lately, huh? Not too long ago, they weren't looking so hot, but they are back, dude. Monster Hunter's been amazing. Devil May Cry came back in glorious fashion. Street Fighter 6 looks insane. Dragon's Dogma 2 is on the way. They brought back Ghosts and Goblins. They brought back Ghost Trick, Mega Man collections, fighting game collections, new exciting IPs like Exoprimal and Pragmata, and last but certainly not least, Resident Evil. It's gotten so much content for years now in gaming and in media in general, yet I see plenty of fans online, not all of them, complaining that they are not getting what they want. Where is my Resident Evil Code Veronica remake, Capcom? Where is my new Resident Evil with Joe Valentine as the main protagonist again, Capcom? Where is my Resident Evil 3 Remake Director's Cut, Capcom? Where is my Resident Evil Remake, Capcom? Where is my Super Suit, Capcom? Almost as if they are oblivious to how much they have gotten recently. You got 5 mainline games in 6 years, an additional multiplayer game that might be trash, numerous TV shows and movies, regardless of how trash they are, and most importantly, Fortnite skins. And yet you complain that your belly is not full. You know what you are to me? You are SpongeBob and Patrick frolicking through my yard, happy and enjoying the surplus you have been taking for granted, while I am Squidward. I am the avid Dead Rising fan, one who firmly believes that Dead Rising 1 alone is better than all of the RE games combined, one who has waited patiently for a new meal, and yet my plate remains empty. But do I fret? Do I complain? Do I bitch? No, I simply wait, because I know that one day I will be rewarded for my long time suffering, watching others enjoy what I dream of one day having. And what is that reward, you may ask? Well, none other than a proper, well-deserved remake. But you might be asking, why does it need a remake? Is it because the original game is outdated and needs a modern overhaul? To put it in perspective, I have played Dead Rising 1 alone 60 plus times. I play it 2 to 3 times a year, and it's still my favorite zombie game experience, period. As an overall game, it's still the most unique and distinct zombie game to ever exist. I think from a gameplay perspective, it's still super responsive and super fun to play. It has an incredible atmosphere, presentation, and world that I adore to death. You can buy it for $6 on sale on console stores and Steam, so it's not like it's forever locked away on an old console or anything. But despite me thinking that it's a game that at its core doesn't need a remake and is completely playable in the modern day, it still does. Not because it needs big graphics or anything, but this is the only way I see Dead Rising making a proper comeback. It has been 10 years since the last Dead Rising game. Oh wait, what do you mean there was a 4th one? Silly, no there wasn't, you're just imagining things. Ryu, take care of it. Thank you, Ryu. But on a serious note, Dead Rising 4 was an utter disaster. It went against everything Dead Rising stood for. Hardcore Dead Rising fans hated it. I absolutely hate it. I thought it was absolutely atrocious. It disrespected everything about the name it carried, and it ended up killing the series. Like most games in the 2010s for Capcom, it wasn't a big financial success, and the studio behind it ended up getting shut down. As a result, it has not been touched whatsoever, and it has been a deafening silence since. No spin-offs, no crossovers, not even so much as a costume in Street Fighter V. The most we got was Frank West in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and well, I actually love MVCI. I think it's the most fun game of the series, and Frank himself is so much fun to play, but that doesn't fit the narrative I'm trying to create, so forget I said it. From the looks of everything at the time, it seemed like Dead Rising had come and gone. But then, I got this strange feeling in my gut when something big happened. Resident Evil 4 Remake gets announced, my favorite Resident Evil game, and it was amazing. It looked so good, and I just couldn't wait for it. The game eventually comes out, and I absolutely loved it. And it got me thinking, Resident Evil 2 Remake came out in 2019, and then Resident Evil 3 Remake came out the next year, which is the exact release schedule that the originals had as well. And so my train of thought continued. Resident Evil 4 came out in 2005, and you know what came out the next year? Dead Rising. I connected these stupid and irrelevant dots together, and my brain just lit the fuck up. I was overcome with so much zeal and excitement at the imaginary prospect that there was a remake in the works for my 3rd favorite game of all time, and it inspired me to make this video. If there was another Dead Rising game to come out, it shouldn't be Dead Rising 5. That bridge is nothing but ash now. The road leads to nowhere. The best and only way to bring it back, in my opinion, is through a remake that serves as a reboot as well. This way, Capcom starts fresh and they expose the series to the humongous and ever-growing ecosystem that they have built thus far. So, to reiterate what I have said like 3 times up to this point, it does need a remake, but the next course of action is asking, what kind of remake are we talking about? In today's age, we have been blessed with many remakes, so rather than me spending potentially tens of minutes trying to set up an entire outline and basically doing a mini video about remakes as a whole and a video about why Dead Rising needs a remake, I can just easily classify the types of remakes I want to talk about. Exhibit A. Do you want a Dead Space remake? One that is super faithful to the original, keeping everything about it intact, while also adding more to the game and making the smartest changes possible to enhance the overall experience? Exhibit B. Do you want a Last of Us remake, which is just a huge graphical facelift and is one-to-one with the original, taking no chances on anything? Or Exhibit C. Do you want a Resident Evil 4 remake, one that elevates the original to new heights, taking chances and putting a different spin on things at the cost of leaving some things behind? I don't know about you, but please let me know in the comments what you prefer. Be sure to like and subscribe while you're at it. I wouldn't mind a strict one-to-one recreation like The Last of Us, and honestly the original game is so good and decently old that it would be a fine approach. But when I think of remakes, I don't want the exact same game, I want to see more added to them. Plenty of older games didn't get to execute all of their ideas due to constraints of time and technology, so a remake is a perfect second chance. And regarding a remake that's like Resident Evil 4, I'm gonna be honest, as much as I love RE4's remake, I wouldn't want it for Dead Rising. Not because I don't think Capcom didn't improve anything or touch up on lesser spotlight elements, because they absolutely did, but for as many things as they cleaned up and improved, they still ended up cutting content, which is something I personally heavily dislike. No matter the circumstance or explanation, I will just never get behind that notion. So with those two jabronis out of the way, for my money, I want a Dead Space remake for Dead Rising. Dead Space keeps everything intact, it added cut content from the original, and made so many smart changes to the design and feel of the game that it blew me the fuck away. The Ishimura is now one big continuous station instead of the old level by level format, which makes backtracking and exploration super fun. The ADS cannon section in the remake is way cooler and way more fun than the original. There's cool ass zero-G sections, they added side quests, an alternative ending, security clearances, more areas, a dynamic flesh system where you can maim, burn, and destroy bodies in disgusting ways. They just added more without inherently taking anything away. Dead Space to me is a perfect remake and the ideal template for future remakes going forward, including Dead Rising. There's so much that could be amended and fixed and enhanced about the original Dead Rising, which prompts the final discussion of this video. What should be changed?
This, my friend, is hell.
I'm sure most of you saw Crowcat's video on RE4, and the discourse around that was insanely annoying to say the least. Not because I agree or disagree with any of the points brought up in the wide sphere of conversation around that video, but because, as usual, some people refuse to be civil or normal about hearing opinions that they disagree with. In the broader scope of things though, people do end up being picky about certain things being changed in a remake, like I'm guilty of this too. Remember earlier when I was sucking off Dead Space, calling it a perfect remake? Well, naturally, some disagree, which is completely fine, it's just my opinion after all. But I perused through a Reddit thread and found complaints about Isaac's footsteps. Freaking footsteps, bro.
Oh, this would have been the best remake ever, but those footsteps, oh my god, I can't stand the fucking footsteps!
Based off of that, I can already imagine some of the responses to my suggestions. I think they should fix the survivor AI.
Well, actually, the poor AI represents how scared and illogical the survivor's decisions are since they're in the zombie-infested mall, you fucking idiot.
I think they should make nighttime scarier, making it more pitch black so that you are incentivized to use more external lighting sources like a torch sword or a flashlight.
Well, see, if you do that, then you compromise the original game's art direction and game direction, which is utterly perfect, you fucking idiot.
I think Frank should eat baguettes like he is a normal person.
Well, here's the thing, pal. If Frank isn't throat guarding a gluten glitchy, I don't want the game!
So, I assure you, all the potential changes, not cuts by the way, changes. Just to clarify, when I say changes, I don't mean cuts. I purely mean additions and improvements. I will discuss things that I think will be for the betterment of this remake that does not exist, and if you disagree, Again, please let me know in the comments. So let's get into it. First would be Willamette Mall itself. In the modern day, it's safe to assume that portions of the mall will no longer be individual hubs, but rather one whole connected mall that you can explore freely without loading screens. So if that's the case, make it bigger. Add some more stores, more weapons, more locales, maybe a new plaza, more environmental tidbits to gain PP, and most importantly, more hidden survivors and psychopaths. The beauty of exploring the mall was finding scoops that Otis never told you about. The first time I went to Hunting Shack with whoever the fuck this guy was, I was amazed that I discovered Cletus, and also scared shitless because he is a scary ass boss. Or seeing two Willamette employees randomly hanging off the stubs of a giant bunny while the zombies underneath them are literally preying on their downfall. These events are awesome. I would love to see more of them scattered around alongside more side missions to add to that sense of exploration and discovery you get when you go off the beaten path. Speaking of survivors and psychopaths, the first order of business should have been fixing their AI. They are notoriously stupid and are oftentimes completely oblivious to their surroundings, and they get stuck or hung up on shit constantly. And holy shit, what is that damage? I wouldn't mind survivors that run away to safety when they see zombies, meaning I have to clear a path and properly escort them, or ones who just freeze up in place out of fear to give each survivor their own distinct feeling. But them running into walls endlessly and stopping randomly cannot be a thing anymore. I have accidentally killed too many survivors to count because they refuse to function. Yeah. I'm only human. Dead Rising 2 though completely fixed the AI for both, so if a remake exists, it probably won't be an issue anyways. What I would like to see though is tougher psychos with more attacks and methods of approach. For example, since the mall is one big space instead of secular spaces, the convicts, assuming they aren't crashing into trees every 5 seconds, could destroy things in the environment. They can crash through trees, shoot them down, maybe you get overwhelmed and you think you can run to Paradise Plaza to get away, but they end up crashing through the doors of the plaza and chasing you everywhere you go no matter what until you kill them or you get to the safe house. Dead Rising is already a punishing game in its own right, and I would love to see more dynamism and challenge both from the world and its inhabitants. Just to give one more example, when the special forces come on day 3, rather than having the one type who just awkwardly run up to you, stand still and shoot you, have, a few types. One can be your standard foot soldier who hide behind cover and are mobile, rolling and juking around. You can have snipers who line up a red dot on you from far away, and others could be like a grenadier or a flamethrower that mows down waves of zombies really fast and do a lot of damage. Go crazy with it. Another topic of discussion would be the story. I think Dead Rising has a great story, one of the best in the zombie medium for sure, but there are a couple of plot points that can be patched and better fleshed out. Like, why does Carlito tip off a bunch of reporters in the first place if he's more than willing to kill you on 3 separate occasions? What was the point? Was he trying to have the story about the zombies come out, or was he just trying to snuff out anyone who was potentially interested and eliminate them? Was he only trying to lure out Barnaby for revenge and Frank just happened to show up? Why doesn't Frank recognize Carlito when you fight him for the first time? Like, yeah, he doesn't know his name or anything, but he never brings up that he saw him on the rooftop at all, even after playing hardball with Brad. When Brad goes after Carlito and Jesse expresses her utmost confidence that Brad will catch him, obviously Brad is never heard from again. So why doesn't Jesse bring up Brad at all afterwards, especially after she sees Carlito literally being dragged to the butcher shop on the surveillance cameras? Wouldn't she be at least a little bit curious as to what happened to Brad if he wasn't able to apprehend Carlito? How do Jesse and Frank actually get infected? Neither of them are explicitly bitten by zombies or stung by queens. At least with Barnaby, it's safe to assume that Carlito got him infected when he captured him. Does a zombie bite only have to graze the skin of someone to infect them? How the fuck did Isabella get to the rooftop when zombies broke through the security room door? And how did she get Frank back to the hideout with zombies and special forces around? Is there a secret passage to the helipad that Carlito had that she used? In addition to the main story, you could also add more to some psychopaths. For example, with the family of snipers, instead of just coldly killing all three, what if there was a way to save Thomas like you saved Paul? You kill his dad and his brother, who were never in their right senses to talk things out anyway, and Thomas willfully surrenders, and you talk to him and get him to the safe house. Now, that in practicality does sound stupid, because I doubt anyone would want to be escorted to safety by a man who brutally killed their family in front of them. But hey, it's just an idea. I know I was sounding like CinemaSins for a bit there, but don't get me wrong, I still love the original story. I just think that you can take this opportunity to flesh out the more minor story elements, and it would do wonders. And while we're on the story, the one thing that I hope isn't compromised if this remake eventually exists is the tone of the game. There is a fantastic video titled Never Be Tone Deaf by Archduke of Suno, which perfectly explains Dead Rising's unique tone. It's seriously a great video, I'll link it down below. Basically, Dead Rising got the rep that it was purely a goofy Oz zombie killing game that didn't take itself too seriously, when in reality that isn't true about the first game at all. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like Dead Rising can't be goofy or wacky, because it definitely can be. Whether it be donning a huge servbot helmet in the middle of dramatic cutscenes, or making zombies cartoonishly slip on oil, or disemboweling special forces units that are wearing a ton of Kevlar, or Frank busting it down sexual style when he puts on women's clothing. Break it down, bitch! Let me see you back it up! Drop that ass down, load it, pick that motherfucker up! But these things are of the player's choice. The game gives them this choice. It's not directly putting it in your face during its main narrative. It's very akin to Yakuza with how they manage grounded drama and conspiracy with absurdist comedy. The most important part, though, is that these two worlds exist, but they never collide, which is what slowly started happening in later Dead Risings that caused them to lose that unique tone of the first. So much so that they ended up completely changing Frank's demeanor as well. And I'm not even talking about Frank in Dead Rising 4 because, well, that's not Frank West, that's Hank East. I'm talking about him specifically in Dead Rising 2 Off the Record, where he's cracking one-liners when he kills psychos and tries overtly hard to look and sound like a badass. I know this is a non-canonical game, but I still felt like he was woefully misrepresented. He's completely jaded in the most uncharacteristic way, and worst of all, Chuck is already the very character Frank is trying to be. Chuck already has one-liners. He's already so badass that he even gets his own timely riffs and cutscenes to emphasize just how much of a badass he is, which is fine, because that is what makes Chuck Chuck. And I love Chuck. It's a great show. But Frank is not Chuck. You just made a second Chuck and grafted Frank onto second Chuck. And I might be in the minority here, but when I played Off the Record for the first time, I was actually off-put by how weird Frank's character direction was. It's like he barely cares about anything going on around him in Fortune City, when it was quite the opposite in Willamette. What made Frank such a resonating character to me was that he was a regular Joe who stumbled upon something far bigger than him. He was a smart-mouthed journalist that knew how to negotiate and survive, but he was also someone who was visibly affected by what was happening around him because he's human. When he beats Cletus, despite Cletus trying to kill Frank and killing this random dude who came out of nowhere, Frank is warning him not to go outside because he will be eaten. Underneath the surface, you could tell that Frank knew that Cletus was just scared out of his mind, and when he's eaten, Frank is just sad, knowing that it shouldn't have been this way. When he beats Kent, he is disgusted that someone in his profession betrayed humanity for a chance at fame and throws his camera away. When he beats Adam, he is horrified to witness someone laughing hysterically while brutally dying. When he beats Cliff, he feels sorrow and is empathetic after hearing the horrific story about Cliff's granddaughter dying screaming and how the war for him never ended. Frank even closes his eyes to let him rest. He understands Carlito's motivation for revenge and promises to reveal the injustice inflicted upon Santa Cabeza while also vehemently condemning his actions. Hell, when the helicopter crashes in the true ending, love the touch of him zooming in on Ed being eaten with his camera, by the way, beautiful detail, he doesn't say shit like, well that sucks, or isn't that just perfect, now how am I gonna get that corn dog? He goes into shock. That is what he does. He drops to his knees in absolute disbelief at what he saw, knowing that his only way out of hell is gone and that he might as well give up. And I'm not even going to mention his resolve after Isabella saves him. That speaks for itself. I don't know many characters that are this expressive and reactive to their situations because, well, yeah, you can kill thousands upon thousands of zombies and kill every psychopath and survivor you come across, Frank, canonically speaking at least, doesn't enjoy anything about this. Not being in the middle of it, nor how it was covered up, nor how many lives were destroyed. It's not a vacation. When he kills psychopaths out of self-defense, he doesn't enjoy it, nor does he sneak diss them like Chuck does. He did what he did to survive, but he also understood why all of these people broke the way they did. This outbreak wasn't a reason to kill as much as you can and get away with it to Frank. It's a genuine tragedy that destroyed countless lives that should have never happened, and Frank understands this and reacts accordingly. That is what truly makes Frank badass, not one-liners, a carefree attitude, or a penchant for killing. I honestly have no idea where this super macho, bravado, badass image came from regarding Frank, and I think that's a huge disservice to the many nuances of his character that made him such a strong protagonist to begin with. And I hope that essence of Dead Rising's original tone isn't lost in the remake. Finally, there is one small thing that I hope isn't gone, but it probably will be, and that most people don't give a shit about, and that is the loading screens. To me, Dead Rising's loading screens played a huge part in the game's presentation. Each cutscene would end with a color-tinged photo still with some blood on it. Each psychopath got their own shearing blood red still, and in between areas the game would show you bloodied news articles about Willamette, reels of moves Frank learned, and also all the in-game photos you took. It made the game feel like it was happening in the past tense, almost like Frank escaped Willamette and he's reliving the nightmare through the photos he took. I loved looking at them when I played the game on the 360, but nowadays with SSDs, these loading screens are a blink and you miss it, which feels honestly kind of sad. These loading screens are the unsung heroes of the game, and since the remake would theoretically be one big seamless open world, loading screens would be less of an occasion, if any at all. But I do hope they would find other ways to replicate that special out-of-game presentation. So yeah, that's the gist of it. I know there are some subjects I didn't touch upon, like the timer and potential autosave and even some licensed music, to which I quickly answer, keep the timer length the same. The grueling timer is what gives Dead Rising its unique sense of urgency, which affects all levels of gameplay. I do not want autosaving at all. Keep manual saving, please. I love watching Frank sleep in peace. Regarding the soundtrack, I would love to hear all the old licensed stuff in there, like, is it even a Dead Rising game if Gone Guru isn't in it? But licensed music is kind of a bitch nowadays, and I wouldn't mind hearing new arrangements and new licensed songs. Maybe just have two separate soundtracks that you can switch between through playthroughs or something. Also, Dead Island 2 kind of spoiled me in this regard. No, actually, it fully spoiled me, but I would love something similar to the flesh system in Dead Rising with dynamic and detailed gore. Dead Rising 3 kind of does it already, but I would love to see that system evolve. And that's all I really wanted to say about this. I love this game and series to death, and I would love nothing more than to see it come back in glorious fashion. I know plenty of Dead Rising fans feel the same. There's so much to discuss about it that I probably didn't even think about, so as I've said numerous times already, I would love to hear your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and maybe join the Discord while you're at it. Thank you so much for watching, and long live Dead Rising.